everyone. Welcome to the May 10 work session of the Ann Arbor City Council. If any council members who are present are not in the city of Ann Arbor, I'd be grateful if you'd make that known to Ms. Beaudry. We have the pleasure today to hear from staff with respect to diversion and expungement pilot programs, as well as Ann Arbor moving together towards Vision Zero, a review of the final transportation plan. Ms. Slay, I believe you are up first. You have the con.
Thank you so much. I am very appreciative to staff hearing the plans for the city's expungement and diversion programs. Diversion is nothing new to the city. We've actually been doing this for 2 years out of the city attorney's office. But this is an enhancement. This is better service to our public. This is better service for all those who have been justice involved due to interactions in the city of Ann Arbor. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and get this started. I will be brief, but this is pretty informal on my part. So if you do have questions, just feel free to interject. You don't have to wait till the end. So here's some basic stuff. These are considered pilot programs for the first 2 years. They will be funded out of the marijuana tax money. I will go in a little bit about budgeting, but first and foremost, I wanted to be able to share with you what the programs consist of. Okay, so like I said, it's twofold: expungement and diversion. We'll start with expungement. That is the process where somebody who is requesting the court set aside or seal their criminal history because of a prior conviction. These are very confusing times. Thankfully, we've had a lot of opportunity because the law has changed as of this April, where it expanded the eligibility, where you can actually have your crimes removed from your record in greater number and in different succession. It's complicated though. At a minimum, there are 12 steps to be able to accomplish this, to expunge just one case. And that can be overwhelming and daunting for so many people. Just facing the criminal justice system again can sometimes be even considered traumatic for many. So it is our pleasure to bring forth this program. As you know, having a criminal conviction is a barrier for so many services. It is a barrier sometimes for housing, less so in the city of Ann Arbor based on our new resolution, but it is a barrier for employment. It is a barrier for maintaining a driver's license, and that can be generational. So alleviating some of those concerns for those who live, work, and come to visit or have prior convictions out of the city of Ann Arbor or the 22nd Circuit Court, which is our circuit court that deals with felonies, is something that the city is working very hard to provide that service. So here's some other good stuff. We have made the nexus to the city very broad. So we are talking about those who will be eligible for assistance from our program, which will run out of the 15th District Court Probation Office, will be those who are residents, who work in the city, go to school in the city, have a conviction that stemmed from the 15th District Court, that's where our courts of misdemeanor jurisdiction are, or those who have a prior felony anywhere in Washtenaw County, but that county seat is right here in Ann Arbor. Our program goal is to provide assistance to 100 people in the first fiscal year who are attempting to expunge their criminal convictions. That is going to be a big goal for us. And I think that we can do it, especially if we get off to a good start July 1st. Diversion basics. So there are a couple of different aspects of diversion, but primarily it works that once somebody is charged with a crime, the goal is to divert eligible people out of the criminal justice system. So in the end, they don't end up with a criminal conviction. It is an agreement between the offender and the prosecutor. Now, if that person is represented by an attorney, then it's kind of a three-party agreement. The goal is to demonstrate accountability, make amends with the community, make amends with the victim if there is one, in exchange for a reduced or a dismissal of the criminal charges. It is restorative justice at its best. This came to the city attorney's office 2 years ago when I brought this program forward, because we had so many people who were leaving their interaction with the city of Ann Arbor with criminal convictions for very minor offenses, and they had paid a great sacrifice for some things. One of those vicious crimes of property is driving with license suspended. I'm not sure how many of you know about that crime, but if you're unable to pay tickets, the Secretary of State will suspend your license. And the suspension of your license, you have to make a choice. Are you going to work? Are you going to school? Can you drive? Should you drive? You don't have money to pay your tickets. And it's just a vicious cycle. The fees compound, there's interest, and one speeding ticket that goes unpaid and is in default can end up in thousands of dollars in fines and costs, which make it prohibitive for somebody to maintain a driver's license. So we have done our best here at the city for the last couple of years to help people get out of that cycle. Now, these are just going to be for City of Ann Arbor cases. So those things that are prosecuted by the city attorney's office. We are talking about noise and nuisance and driving with license suspended and retail fraud. We do have some simple assaults, fighting, disorderly drunk. The idea of diversion is to address the root cause of why somebody became justice involved, to make amends, make a different path forward, and promote accountability. And I think that this program has been wildly successful. Over the last 2 years, we've diverted probably close to 300 cases, which is fantastic, I think. It was off to a good start. But the program has outgrown the city attorney's office. In essence, it was Ms. Harris and myself administering the program completely by ourselves. So I will be asking the 15th District Court to take on this responsibility. One of the probation officers will serve as a diversion expert. They are caseworkers, they're social work based. Their idea is to provide support and to help folks get on that path or provide the service that they actually need so that we see less likely to have justice involvement, or also known as recidivism. So our program goals is to help those that have been justice involved in the city and address their root causes for justice involvement. It's a hard metrics to measure. You never know what it means for someone to be relieved of a criminal conviction or be able to put a matter behind you, but I can tell you it means just about everything for the people that are involved. So how are we going to pay for this? Oh my goodness, what does this look like in terms of budgeting? So we are asking for a full-time employee. So the salary, benefits, the IT support package is $142,300. That's the big chunk. That's the heavy lift on paying for this program. 80% of the time they'll be working on diversion matters. Hopefully we will be sending anywhere from 100 to 150 people a year through the diversion program. And expungement, they'll be doing 20% of the time. So we roll down our expenses. One-time heavy lifts for diversion, nothing. I know that's fantastic. That's probably something you never hear during the budget cycle ever. But it's not a lot of cost associated outside of staff cost. We are going to be asking for $1,000 in advertising and social media. That's an opportunity just to reach out to our community members and to reach out to the criminal defense bars and those who are practicing criminal law so that they know that this program exists and it's expanded. It is more than just Ariane and Sean from the city attorney's office doing the best that we can, but we actually have some backing behind us. In addition to that, I'm requesting $5,000 to be used for substance abuse evaluation and testing. Part of the diversion process sometimes deals with those who are struggling from substance abuse disorder. And we want to be able to provide resources such as screening and assessment, referrals to programs that may be able to help folks. It's a barrier for a lot of people. And if you're not carrying a great insurance plan, getting treatment for your substance abuse disorder sometimes is not possible or even probable. So we do want to eliminate that barrier and provide the screening and assessment tools that we can. One of common programs that I've used over the last couple of years would be at Dawn Farm. We've done some at First Step Referral Services, and of course, Community Corrections provides some screening and assessment as well. And then a yearly cost of $500 for employee training. As for expungement, there is a heavy lift on the one-time fee of $15,000 to work with an advertisement agency. Part of the issue, and this is here, don't be afraid by this number. I know this is not a huge number in terms of city budgets, but it is expensive compared to the total lift of the program. But the city has a Facebook page, and that is pretty much the extent of our social media. I know that there are different avenues to reach people. There are YouTube ads, there are Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. There's all these great opportunities for us, but we need corporate accounts to set those things up. I've talked to the communications department. Ms. Wandrash has informed me that we are going to need to use an outside firm to be able to accomplish this. Here's the best part. Once we have all these channels set up and individual ways to meet people who maybe aren't on Facebook, I was told by my daughter that because I use emojis with the crying tears and Facebook, I'm old. I'll go with that. I think that's going to be okay. But she said that we need to diversify how we're reaching folks. So these can be used then by every other city department. So this is a one-time lift that we'll use the marijuana money for, so we can reach people, so we can talk to them about the expungement program, but then we'll have access citywide. So when we're talking about DEI initiatives and how we communicate with people, this firm that we have yet to retain, but this firm will be able to help us do that. So I'm imagining Missy being able to use it in her solar panel project and all the other great initiatives that the city has going forward. But it will be a targeted advertising plan that will incorporate what the city is holding dear and what we're working for, which is DEI communication. Our reoccurring expenses will be 20% of a full-time employee. That'll be somebody in the probation office. iChat or legal history, that's a fancy way for saying we need to find out what's on your criminal history so we know which cases to apply to expunge. And there is a cost associated with that. We are asking for $5,000 for print, social media, and other types of ads. That was a best estimate that we had after kind of speaking with our communications department. Big cost for this is application and court records. Just to get a copy of one case, it's $11. That's the average. And the application fee is $50. So for $64 sometimes on average, by the time it's covering the cost of prints, that is a true barrier for so many people to have their case considered before the judge. Fingerprint fees. We are at $1,500. That's a pretty generous number in there. I've talked to Chief Cox. He has agreed to open Ann Arbor PD up for fingerprinting for this purpose, which is not a purpose that we normally do that for. So we'll have a good collaboration within the city. Outside legal fees. It is unethical for the city attorney's office or anyone else in the city to provide legal counsel to somebody who is seeking an expungement. And I'll give you a brief example of how that works. If somebody comes to the city attorney's office and they said, 10 years ago, I got a conviction for driving with license suspended, Ariane, I'd really like to have my conviction expunged. I would say that's fantastic. Let me introduce you to the folks at the probation department. They will be doing all the file gathering, the maintenance, the running of the criminal histories, the fingerprints, helping fill out the applications. We then need to turn it over to an outside legal agency. When you go to court, the judge will be there, the prosecutor who convicted you will be there, and the person who is doing the application with or without an attorney. How it works is they'll say, Your Honor, I would like the opportunity to have my case set aside. And if there is an objection to be had for statutory reasons, I have to be the one to make it. Now, I can tell you in my career of almost 15 years of doing this, I have not done that, but it could have existed, right? If they're not statutorily eligible, I might have to say no. We don't want someone thinking that I am their own personal counsel. They need to have their own advocate. And because of that, we've reached out to the public defender's office, and Madam Defender Simpson has advised that her team is willing to take this on. And so for the bargain price of $5,000 a year, they will represent all of our clients. Now, if somebody is 150% below the poverty income status, and I can provide that for you for anyone who's interested. Legal aid has also offered to take those applicants as well, to ease some of the burden for Madam Defender's office. Our graphics, print and media design, possibly some commercials through CTN is always included. That's zero cost. And then $500 for employee training. That would include the probation department and their staff for doing screening. So, all right, so this is our total fiscal year budget. $6,500 for diversion, $27,000 for the expungement program, one full-time employee with salaries, fringes, and IT costs, one-time cost of $15,000. That's our ad firm, with a total budget of $198,000. So this is diversion and expungement in a nutshell. It has been a pleasure to present this to you. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. Whichever council member, I'm sorry, I can't, you guys are in a very small screen. I can see Council Member Griswold, you're on top right now. Sorry if I'm calling out of order.
Councilmember Griswold.
Thank you very much. This was really a concise, informative, and very enjoyable presentation. You mentioned 100 clients per year. Do you anticipate there's a greater need than just 100, or is that basically what you think the need will be this first year as people become aware of the program?
I think the need could easily quadruple that at some point. But for our first year, it's going to be, we have to get out there as the brand you trust. So that will be advertising. It might be a little daunting at first to think the folks who gave you the conviction over there at 15th District Court are now trying to help you, be relieved of your conviction. So there is going to be a lot of work put into place in terms of being able to communicate that we are out here to help and to serve our community. I'm hoping that, I'd imagine the first couple of months might be a little slow, but as we gain a little notoriety and we start advertising, I think 100 is a pretty safe budget for the first year. I will promise you this, if we start to get close next year around this time, I'll be back. And I'll let you know if we're expecting more folks, and maybe we can amend for our second year.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Slay, for being here and really laying this out in such a great way that it is enjoyable to be here tonight at this work session. Some of these are not so exciting. This one in less than 2 months from us passing the resolution asking for such programs to be considered by council, you come back with something that's exactly what I was hoping for. I do have a few concerns just in the respect of adding an FTE. These are not reoccurring funds, as we know. We're hopeful that they'll be incoming for years to come, but we just don't know how long that is. But that's in no way going to diminish my support for this. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and that'll be a good problem. And hopefully one day we won't need a need for this. And then again, just the great inclusion of the targeted advertising plan, being able to use that, hopefully Mr. Crawford, and be able to empower our boards and commissions to use that. I know many boards and commissions struggle with no communication ability from the city, or very little. We need to expand and become more effective there. And no, I don't think you're old for using those emojis. Yeah, happens fast, I guess. But is there any cost savings from the diversions? if fewer people are going through the prison pipeline system, are we going to be saving money in other areas that can be shown as to residents and taxpayers that programs like this actually can save us money on top of all the other social justice issues that we're trying to address?
That's a great question. And I hope that both of these programs are going to lead to institutional change. That was kind of the goal from the beginning, is that we are looking at the criminal justice system not as a punitive system, but one who will give a hand up, not a handout, but a hand up to get out of the criminal justice system. It may be one of those things that we're not easily able to quantify because it's hard to assess what all the burdens that could be associated with having a criminal conviction, or just meeting somebody where they're at for the very first time when they become, or maybe the 20th time when they become justice involved, and somebody is actually taking an interest, taking time, and investing in them so that they can be relieved from some of the substance abuse disorder, from suffering from mental illness. We need to treat these things in the space that they deserve to be treated in, as a disease. And so I'm not sure if we're able to put a tangible number on it. It's something I can definitely give some thought to and reach out to our other team members and those in probation. But I hope that you leave the presentation thinking in your heart, you're doing the right thing, because we're doing everything we can to help people, especially those who are not just justice involved as defendants, but those who are victims of crime as well.
Councilmember Painter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. That's really great that we're doing this. I remember back when you did the warrant clearance day, and what I was telling folks to get over there and see what you were doing. If I recall, that you had other services that are necessary for folks to kind of be reintegrated in the community in a safe and helpful way. And so if we look at 100 people and, it's like $2,000 each for helping these 100 people, I mean, that's a pretty good deal. Now, are they going to have access to those same sorts of social services and so on in this program as you did with the warrant clearances and so on? Absolutely.
Those are, for the last 2 years, that has been my day in and day out community partners, working with Avalon Housing, Community Mental Health, Dawn Farm, Home and New Vision, the Shelter Association. We come together on a very regular basis to address needs. One of the things that's different about the city's diversion program than any other diversion program that is running in the state is that it is truly individualized. It is based on that person at that moment and what they need to get to the next part of their life, to be able to move on from this. And so you'll see a lot of diversion programs that 6 months, substance abuse assessment, mental health assessment, and you have to go through all these different assessments before you can even get the ball rolling on what the root cause of what brought you to be justice involved is. The city, because it is an agreement, not with the court, but is agreement between the offender or the offender and their attorney and the prosecutor, which for the city is me, it really allows it to be specialized and tailored, which is consistent with what just got passed into legislation, is that probation and court supervision shouldn't be rubber stamped. And here's the best part. It's okay if you don't make it the first time through diversion. If you're not ready, we're still going to be here for you. We don't hold that against you. We'll give you as many times as you need that's prudent. And so that's, one of the cool things about our program. We haven't had a viable diversion program in the city in decades, actually in the county. So
it's kind of shocking. So when they, when people do take advantage of this, hopefully they will. And I assume that because we're doing this diversion or this expungement, then it's gone. It doesn't follow them around, right? Because I know that's like, we can ban the box all we want locally, but if they move to Ohio or something, they still have this thing following them. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, thanks. I mean, this is an easy one to want to support, especially we have that extra little bit of money. So thank you for putting this together.
Of course. Thanks.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. Thanks for the great presentation and your leadership on this. A couple questions, two on expungement and one on diversion. So I'm a big supporter of this, but I know that there are still skeptics in the community and around about expungement. How are we going to be evaluating this program? Are we looking at recidivism or any other sort of tools to be able to showcase our success with it, hopefully.
It could be a little tricky because one of the things that we can't do is follow up is to find out if somebody's justice involved. That would require like running them through lien, which is illegal.
Okay.
But we can look at how many applicants we have. And so sometimes, and I'd have to imagine that there are going to be people who hear about our program. They understand that the city has gone to great efforts to take some of the financial barriers away, some of the just tricky parts of navigating the court system and finding certified court records. I mean, that could be a mystery for people. I mean, unless you're really in the system, it's hard to go about doing those things. What I anticipate is that we're going to have folks who don't qualify. They have too many felonies or too many prior misdemeanors, but it won't end there. As part of our advocacy to make sure they're hooked up with services, that same network that we'll be using in the diversion will also be able to use with those who are trying to have their expungement done. We also have a partnership with Michigan Works. So if employment is an issue, we have a connect to call our friend Herb Fluker over at Michigan Works and to provide services. We'll have to keep track and see kind of in that first year what success we have in bringing forth the expungements. But part of it is just getting the applications done and finding out, I mean, some people might be a little premature in their request. There are timeframes, so many years have to go by before you're eligible with certain crimes. So we might say, you know what, you're so close, but come back in 9 months and we'll be happy to take your application. So we'll probably have to do a little bit of data reporting and data mining after that first year just to see what presents, what types of cases present for us.
Okay. And then secondly, you mentioned that eligibility was pretty broad for the expungement program. Are we going to be doing targeted outreach to folks that we specifically think might be good candidates that are, you know, maybe residents of the city of Ann Arbor who, you know, like, or is it going to be just kind of
Nope.
trying to bring people in?
I would make it as broad as we possibly can. So working with our communications department, they have an email address for every social worker in town probably, and reaching out for all of our social service agencies, our partners that we already have established through the diversion program and through some of our specialty courts, and letting them know, hey, this is what we're doing. We'll start advertising in locations where we might find it prudent. However, we are going to be relying on that ad firm on how to reach targeted populations. That's something that the city, I think, as a whole can just do better on. And this is an opportunity to bring it forth funding through this program, but it will benefit the entire city.
And then finally, I think you said that over the last 3 years that you've diverted about 300 cases, which is about 100 cases per year. And then, but the goal for the program is to divert, I think, 100 cases per year with bringing on a new FTE. So you've been kind of tacking this on to your existing workload. So I'm just kind of curious why that goal doesn't rise when it's an individual FTE.
It may rise. I think it's, like I said, it's a little slow due to COVID right now. We just don't have the numbers. My 300 was over 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But due to COVID, we have a lot less reporting of things right now. Our population was down substantially this year with the students, a good majority of them being away from campus. And we weren't responding to certain types of calls for a while. So I think it will rebound as we get back to a normal in the community and our student population comes back to campus. But with that first year, I'm just not sure what our numbers are going to look like. It just depends how many folks are coming to play or come to school or who are in the city at the time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Song.
I'm so excited about this. I've been following, my family foundation has been involved in the Clean Slate work in Detroit. So I have the numbers from them and it's pretty comparable to what you're proposing. The city of Detroit for 2021 asked for 2 additional attorneys with support staff and estimated a cost per expungement of $1,000. For 2021, estimated 500 expungements, and they needed $500,000. And that was raised through the Michigan Justice Forward Fund. So my question for you is, has there been any, have you looked at additional monies besides the general fund to support this? That's my first.
No.
I have a couple others.
Okay, I have not. This was just an opportunity that I saw when the resolution came out about helping those who have been affected by expungements and are returning community members. So this is where we started.
Good. I mean, your expungement rate is pretty impressive because Detroit did 253 last year. And if you're doing 100 a year compared to the city the size of Detroit, that's pretty amazing without additional staff. So my other question is, do we have a sense of how many cases, how many requests we might anticipate in subsequent years, based on, like, do we have a sense of how many might have requested expungements in past years, but we haven't been able to because of lack of capacity? Have there been folks that we've, not because they weren't eligible, but because we didn't have capacity?
No, so this is a brand new program for the city. We've not engaged in this. I have had the opportunity to talk to some folks at Michigan Works. They processed 43 applications out of our area last year. However, the law changed this last April. And so it expanded the eligibility. So there's not really a great litmus out there as to what it's going to look like. But across the state of Michigan, tens of thousands of people are now eligible.
Okay.
Just by looking at criminal history records through Secretary of State and through LEAN, which is the Law Enforcement Information Network. So the amount of people eligible based on previous years is exponentially higher.
Okay. And then another question. So Councilmember O'Malley had asked about the potential return on investment. I know in Detroit, they've been working with U of M on an empirical and expungement study. And they estimated $1 to $3.70 for every dollar that the city of Detroit spends on Project Clean Slate. So in a potential $3.70 return in the form of potential annualized wage gains, creating local, state, and federal employment tax revenue. So there's, if we can, so I mean, you're also saying that if we can help folks get back and participate and actually work, there's an economic benefit to that. Is there, would Ann Arbor be able to participate in this study too? Do you think, is there interest in kind of measuring the results?
You know, in the 3 weeks that it took me to put this together, I haven't had the opportunity to reach out to anyone to find out if they're interested yet.
Okay.
We are surrounded by two fantastic universities and a really awesome one just to the north of us. So I'm sure we could find someone to take on this fantastic project.
Yeah.
You know, that would just be as simple as reaching out to people and floating the idea. The goal was to get this party started immediately because we have such a need with the law changing this April, and you know, why wait another minute? So if we can start analyzing the data later on, maybe this fall, and we can find a researcher who's absolutely amenable to that, but we can start helping people today.
I'll send you this project proposal just so that, I mean, you're totally in line with what the asks you're making for it's. I'd like to think we're a progressive city that can get this done. So thank you for all the work.
Councilmember Regina.
Thanks. I'll keep this brief. I don't think I have any questions. I just wanted to thank Attorney Slay for all of her work and proactivity on this. I know, I think she called me just a couple of days even after we initially passed the resolution and kind of floated this idea to see if this was in line with some of the thinking that we may have had as council members in allocating some of this money. And so the fact that she was able to pull this plan together and really just kind of take our direction and pull something together that not only captures our values as a city, but the work that we're hoping to get done is really impressive. And so I just wanted to thank you for all of your work on this. And I absolutely look forward to seeing this. You will not have any resistance from me. I think this is a great plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Any other questions? I guess for my part, Ms. Slay, I'd like to add my thanks as well. This is a great opportunity for us to do a lot of good for folks, and you're taking charge, and that's great, and I'm really grateful for it, and I know that we all are, and that we that we have a chance to do a lot of good. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting this opportunity for institutional change. If you have any questions that come up later, feel free to email me and I will get back to you as fast as I can. Take care. Have a good night, everyone.
Owen, thank you. Mr. Hughley, do we have the pleasure?
Mayor, tonight for the transportation plan, we have Stacy Meekum from Sam Swartz, and assisting her as backup is Eli Cooper from transportation.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm not able to share my screen. Can somebody enable
Includer?
screen sharing?
Yep, you should be all set now.
Thanks. All right. Well, thank you for having me this evening. I am just going to walk through for you an overview of the planning process and specifically the public engagement process that we went through for this plan. I'm going to take you through an overview of what the plan document itself looks like and then anticipated next steps. So I guess I should take a step back. I'm assuming that everybody on the call is familiar with this process, at least to a certain extent, and has seen the plan. The process that we went through overall came down to 3 phases. The first was a discovery phase in which we as a consultant team were working to learn about the opportunities, the challenges, just what's on the ground today in Ann Arbor in terms of transportation and getting around. And then in that phase, we were also trying to identify what's important to the community, and in doing so, developing a set of mobility values that would guide decision-making throughout the process. So the next phase was what we call the ideation phase. And that's where we're doing, we're looking at, what we found in the data analysis and through the discovery phase from public engagement. So looking at, what the current issues are and or opportunities and what people, want to see going forward. We're also looking to other communities and seeing what's worked in other places and developing a really long list of ideas for projects and programs and policies that could help the city achieve its goals. And then in the action planning phase, we worked a lot with the stakeholders to refine and vet those strategies, and then finally organize them by priority and timeline, assign costs and estimated costs and resources so that the city has a very clear roadmap to getting these done. Throughout the process, we had a really robust community engagement process, and we were really, really impressed by how much the Ann Arbor community gets engaged in these processes. So this lays out what activities we did for public engagement through each phase. So in the discovery phase up here, we started off with a transportation behaviors survey. This was an online survey primarily. We did also do some intercept surveys in person. And with that, we were just trying to understand how people get around today, how they would like to get around, what challenges they face. And we had over, I think, 1,500 responses just within the first week, and then ultimately over 1,800 responses, which is just incredible response rate for a community this size. So that really helped us set the tone for the plan and the engagement efforts. Another activity we did in that phase was really based on the feedback we were getting early on, which was that bicycling and mobility for bicycling was really important to the community. So we developed a bicyclist level of comfort survey and put that out online. And that really set the tone, gave us like a baseline to work with in terms of what's in the community today, how comfortable people feel using different streets and different types of facilities. We also did a traditional public open house, a series of focus groups, and a couple pop-up meetings as well, where we took some activities out to events in the community. Then through the ideation phase, we did another traditional open house in person. We coupled that with a corridor preferences survey, which mimicked one of the activities in the open house. And in doing so, we were able to, get the same kind of feedback or same feedback on the same kind of issues from a broader group, from a lot, people who couldn't attend the open house in person. And then some other online surveys we did through that phase, again, in response to like what we were hearing from the community through the discovery phase. Pedestrian crossings was a key issue. So we put out an online survey to hear from people about where they wanted to see new crossings installed, or where they wanted to see crossings that were already designated crossings upgraded. We also had done a draft bike network and put that back out online for feedback. And then in the action planning phase, we did another public open house, which was virtual this time. And we had a final open comment and review period. This actually is very similar information, just presented in a different way, kind of a time-based overview of the public engagement activities and those online engagement activities that I already went through. And then for those of you who weren't able to make any of those meetings, just have a couple of slides with pictures and graphics from some of the activities we did. So this group of photos is from the initial open house. I'm sure you'll recognize at least one person in these photos. So this was both the open house and from one of the pop-ups at the Mayor's Green Fair. And at each of our in-person events, we had just really interesting, we tried to make really fun graphics and things that captured people and got them interested in participating. And so these are just some examples of the activities we did. At the first one, we were asking people what kind of street they would like to see in different contexts. So whether it was a downtown business district or a commuter corridor or a residential street, based on what we're seeing in other communities. This is an example of the corridor priorities activity that we did both in person, and this is the one that we mimicked online. We also had a really integral component, stakeholder engagement component that was really critical to the development of the plan. They really helped develop, not just guide the plan, but really had hands-on great feedback and not just feedback even, but original content and things for us to consider. So I can't stress the importance of these committees enough. We had two advisory committees. One was the technical committee with members representing city and partner agencies, and the other was a broad base of community groups representing, making up the community advisory group. So we met with each of these committees 4 times throughout the process. At each of these meetings, we were also giving them an overview and feedback of what we found from the public engagement. So they were hearing what the broader group community wanted to see or what they were telling us. So at the first meeting, we were talking again about goals and values. That was part of the discovery phase. Meeting 2, we were giving them an overview of our data analysis and what we've found from other communities. In meeting 3, that's where they really rolled up their sleeves and helped with refining those strategies, that long list of ideas that we came to the table with. They both lengthened that list, but also helped refine it and prioritize it. And then finally, providing a draft plan review. We also had engagement with the commissions throughout. We met with the Transportation Commission 4 times on its own throughout the process, so starting at the kickoff meeting. And then the Planning Commission, we met with them twice in the fall towards the end of the process, and finally, most recently, had a joint Transportation and Planning Commission presentation and discussion. And so I mentioned that we just recently completed a final public review and comment period. And some of the key updates that resulted from that, we did get some good feedback through that process. We ended up refining both the bike and transit maps, added some more clarity to some of the language in the key strategies, and added some additional content in several sections. So now for an overview of the plan document itself. Again, hopefully you all have had a chance to see it and at least flip through it. I don't expect that everybody's had a chance to read every word. It is definitely a lengthy plan, but it is comprehensive, and hopefully you're able to find and hone in on those key things. So just by way of an outline, it starts with an introduction and gives a brief overview of what we found about mobility in Ann Arbor today and the mobility values and goals that we found the community held dear. And then the bulk of the plan are these mobility strategies, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. Section 5 shows some conceptual drawings of what some of these strategies could look like translated onto the street. And then section 6 is about the implementation. And then finally, we have some references in the back with a glossary and partner acronym guide. So the values that we found that the community wanted to see to guide the plan were safety, mobility, accessibility for all, healthy people and sustainable places, and regional connectivity. But what we found was that a lot of the strategies really touched on more than one of these. So the plan is not organized by those values, and rather each strategy refers back to them so that you can see how we're meeting those values. And then the overarching goals that were pretty clear directives to us was that the city's goals are to achieve 0 deaths and 0 emissions. So I mentioned that long list of strategies that we refined. We refined them down to 76 total strategies that would help the city achieve those 2 goals of 0 deaths and 0 emissions. We further refined that into 22 key strategies that are the most important for the city to focus on. And in the plan, we give those 22 key strategies a little bit more, they're handled more in depth. So it gives you the background of what we found is the current condition for that strategy, what the recommendation is itself, and how to achieve that. What the targets are also that you should be looking for. And actually, so for all of the strategies, they all discuss how they relate to the values. They all indicate what kind of discipline is reflected in that strategy. So it's cross-cutting. We know that achieving 0 deaths and 0 emissions is not going to just rely on infrastructure, for instance. So we know we need engineering strategies as well as education strategies and encouragement, and enforcement, equity, and evaluation. So those are all represented. Each strategy also indicates who should be involved in implementing that strategy, what the action strategy should be. Is it a short-term action, medium-term action, or a long-term action? And then I mentioned targets, so that's the accountability piece of it. So this is what just one sample page looks like. This is one of the key strategies. So the kind of shorthand of the strategy is at the top, number 6, bike routes. The full strategy is written out just below that. It goes into the current state, so where we are now. What is being proposed is in this strategy description section. What the timeline is based on when that strategy should be started, who the lead agency and stakeholders are, and then the targets for the accountability. And then across the top are the values that that strategy speaks to. So every strategy is also included at a matrix at the back. So even those key strategies that are given more attention in the kind of bulk of the plan are repeated here in this matrix so that you have everything all together. And this includes the full list of all strategies, organized by timeline. So for anticipated next steps, some of the first action items are to designate a Vision Zero Citizen Advisory Board and start looking at an initial list of projects that can address the plan priorities. Develop a system to monitor and evaluate the plan implementation itself, and then work towards 0. So with that, we can address any questions.
Councilmember Briggs.
I don't have any questions because I've had lots of opportunity to ask them, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's working on this. This has been a really great process, and you can tell how much the community has been engaged on it. I just wanted to thank the entire project team.
Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I want to say thank you. I actually participated in the technical advisory committee for some time based on owning an electric vehicle. A lot of this is planning, and I know it's a plan, but I'm wondering, Stacy, if you can give us some advice, because we have some known problems in terms of super strategy number 5, enhance safety and visibility at uncontrolled crosswalks. Well, we know that we have crosswalks without illumination. We know that we have crosswalks with overgrown vegetation in violation of our city ordinance, but we never seem to have the resources to do some of the operational functions that need to be done. So based on your experience with other cities, do you have any advice for us?
With respect to like vegetation, I think a lot of cities it's a combination of the city going out and maintaining that themselves, and also relying on property owners to do some of that. So in order to achieve that, I think that education is a key part of, if you are looking to build those partnerships and get help in maintaining the roads. I don't know, I don't know specifically how many resources are put towards that in Ann Arbor versus other communities. So I can't speak to that directly.
Oh, okay, thanks. And I really appreciate that you're touching on education, because the Environmental Commission right now is looking at an educational component, not only to explain the need to be able to see pedestrians and cyclists, but also tying in with our sustainability goals to use more native plantings and to get away from turf grass. So thanks, that's definitely in line with what we're doing.
Great, yeah, along those lines, I assume, I also didn't look at, the landscaping guidance of the city, but I assume you guys already have some guidance on what can be planted along the roadway to improve visibility. But if not, that's definitely something to look into. The cultivars and types of plantings that are used make a difference.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. This is a really thorough report with so much to look through. One thing that, well, the thing that jumps out the most at me is the recurring theme of speed throughout this entire report. And while things like vegetation and lighting are obviously important, the portion that deals with speed, and this graphic, that a pedestrian hit by a car driving at 20 miles per hour, 9.5 out of 10 pedestrians survive. And then when you move up to 30 miles an hour, it's 5 out of 10 pedestrians survive. And at 40 miles per hour, it's 1 out of pedestrians survive. And the point made that no one was killed in a traffic crash on our streets with 25 miles per hour speed limits. So to me, that just really speaks to the need for council to prioritize lowering the speed limits on our streets to the greatest extent that we can. Can you talk a little bit about what we can do? As I know it's in here, but can you just kind of go through what we can do as a council to make that happen?
Well, first I think the direct answer to that question is probably better handled by Eli, but I want to first tie your question to Council Member Griswold's, because I think that actually the speed has a lot to do with visibility as well, because your cone of vision is different if you're traveling faster. It's narrower. I think a former colleague of mine put it very well, that you often hear in the wake of a pedestrian crash that the pedestrian came out of nowhere. But
They didn't.
Pedestrian didn't actually come out of nowhere. You just didn't see them. And in part, you didn't see them. And potentially one of the reasons you might not have seen them is the speed you're driving. So I think that either Eli or Raymond could speak better to what the council can do in regard to speed limit.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the first bite of the apple, and thank you for the question. Speed has been an issue. We hear it from community groups on arterials in their neighborhoods and through their neighborhoods. So we have a traffic calming program that's limited to the residential streets. We could use council support and direction. The plan has a strategy recommending a traffic calming program on a higher order roadways. That requires the resources necessary in order to develop the program and then to deploy the ideas along the corridors. Other recommendations in the plan, there are some tectonic plates shifting at the state level, state law, and the like. And so we, again, need to move forward with the resources in order to conduct the safe speed studies, to allocate our speed limits based on our safe speed studies as opposed to the previously required 85th percentile that the state has mandated for us. So there are a number of opportunities. The education obviously is another one. The council directly could, and this may be an area that is more controversial, perhaps throughout the community or at a broader level at the state. But there's been a lot of success in other communities with automated speed cameras. And so, again, that's an issue where what we see in the state statutes, what we're permitted to do is an opportunity for the city of Ann Arbor as a major community in the state of Michigan to stand up and stand out about how these tools are effective. They're reasonably priced. They don't intrude on personal liberties or civil liberties, but they do save lives. And one of the pieces of this entire Vision Zero program is to eliminate traffic-related fatalities by 2025. Speed, thank you very much, is a critical factor in that. And those are just a couple of areas that we as a community, with your guidance as council and staff support, can begin to make changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Malley.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate this presentation as well. It's very comprehensive. It has a lot of meat to it. A lot of data. The question I have, I guess, comes to some of the surveys and the making sure that the respondents are all just single originated responses. There's obviously things in place to keep duplicity from happening. I take it. Just need to ask. Then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I believe the survey, well, the survey system, I was going to talk about SurveyMonkey, but I guess we used OpenGov through the city's system. So I don't know if anybody here can speak directly to preventing duplication of responses.
Is there anybody here that can answer that right now?
Yeah, I'll take a first crack at it. Good evening, Council. Raymond Hess, Transportation Manager. So, you know, I'm not too familiar with the behind the scenes Open City Hall format that we use for a lot of our City Hall, for a lot of our surveys. But as Stacy just mentioned, we use that pretty regularly. And it does require a sort of registration in order to record your response. So it does really kind of, you know, I won't say it completely eliminates the opportunity for someone to try to submit multiple responses, but I think it creates a fairly significant barrier. And the other thing I'll note in my work in other communities, that once you hit a sort of critical threshold or critical mass of number of responses like we have on this one, when we're talking about responses in the thousands, even if there was a bad actor out there who is trying to skew results, we have so much other data that we're working with that it would be almost impossible. I mean, nothing is impossible, but it'd be almost impossible for a single individual to try to, you know, enter so many responses to skew it in this way. So I have some confidence that, you know, what we have and what we've heard from the community, you know, we've heard from a lot of different voices. And
thank you, Mr. Hess. I appreciate that comment. But to me, I think it needs to be clearer for us as policymakers, someone in my seat especially right now, to have confidence in knowing that the survey results don't have any duplicity to them. We do take into account those results pretty heavily when we're making decisions. And I just want to make sure that we have good information to work with. I can take this offline. I know we have limited time. I don't want to take up too much time, but that becomes a concern of mine. I do also would like to know what we're doing to broaden the scope of inclusion. with survey results and responses and people who are able to fill them out. I take it that all these were online surveys. Were any done in any other format platform? And what are we doing for DEI efforts to make sure that we're really getting to people to level the playing field, as they say, on how we're conducting surveys when it comes to that? Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to part of that. We did do a round of focus groups at the beginning. That was to get to broaden the voices we were hearing from. We also, with that first survey, it was online, but we took it out in person as well and had people fill it out with us on the street. We also collected zip codes of people who were coming to the in-person events and adjusted where we did pop-up meetings based on that. And so, I think it's still a work in progress to try to get the most diversity of voices that we want to see, but we did take a lot of effort to try to broaden how we were getting input, and also through that community advisory group. And I see that Eli has his hand up, so he might want to add to that.
Thank you, Stacy. And going back to the first issue relative to the survey, I think it's important to note in this process, the survey results were presented to the advisory committees. So although there may be some potential for someone to have had an outsized influence in the numbers, the fact is that the actual output of the survey numbers were reviewed by several policy bodies and technical staff as a way to make sure that we weren't being led in an inappropriate direction. With regard to the broadening, what I can say specifically is we did in-person event in places like the Peace Neighborhood Center as a part of our outreach. We also do have within our communications group a public engagement team, and we have been working with them in order to outline those areas. Stacy talked about the focus groups, and those focus groups were specifically designed to outreach to the old elderly community, to the school age community, and various other those targets. We do have metrics from the participants in the process because the public engagement team has a survey to ask those types of questions so that we can refine our outreach process as a city moving forward with subsequent events. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. I don't know if I have enough time, but I do have a question on whether we are, I apologize for running over, working with other stakeholders in our community, other bike enthusiasts, like people, bike shops. We have many bike shops in our community. Are we targeting, reaching out to those organizations that cycle and do business in our community for their input?
Yeah, we've been doing that for the 16 years I've been with the city. I know many of the managers personally, and although this is not a bicycle or non-motorized master plan, it is a comprehensive that addresses vehicles as well as active transportation. We understand, recognize, and appreciate the value that the cycling shop and the cycling community represents in creating the diversity in our transportation network.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. I guess I just have a sort of a general question, maybe for a presenter here. So when we talk about a transportation plan goal as being zero emissions by a certain year, what can you speak a little to the relationship that we have to have with the city and between the city, the DDA, the other job centers here in the city? A lot of our ability to reduce that is going to be to reduce commuter traffic, obviously. But we talk about zero emissions in our city, but we still have thousands of parking spaces in our downtown in the form of parking structures and so on. And so could you speak a little to how we're going to wind that down and still be able to maintain those businesses in our downtown, and how we're going to get people downtown in a zero emission manner, when we continue to have big parking structures as acting as magnets, you might say, for all this traffic. And also, I talk about like our relationship with Job Center. If the university has tens of thousands of are responsible for a huge amount of that commuter traffic, how are we going to get those people to go emission free? So I just like a general overview.
Yeah, so again, appreciate the question. I think part of the challenge for us as well as society as a whole is to balance the transportation playing field. What we have is a plan that makes recommendations for an all ages and all abilities transportation system. It's not just all ages and all abilities for bicycling, but it's for pedestrian. We have recommendations for transit. So I don't have, if you will, a silver bullet to say this is going to drive us to zero. It's in Ann Arbor. We're a community where people choose to make decisions about how they travel. And our investments, our plans, our strategies at this point are oriented to creating a multimodal, comfortable transportation network that allows all people to have a variety of choices. One of the key strategies is the 20-minute neighborhood, which means that folks could be able to walk from their home to many activities of their daily life, whether it's work, whether it's shopping, whether it's school. So I'm not here to say that I have the exact answer of how we get to zero or how we achieve the 820 strategy, but I do believe as a transportation professional that what we're looking at is strengthening the recommendations to address how people can have a variety of comfortable, safe alternatives for them to choose to use. Thank you.
And if I may just piggyback off of Eli's answer too, when this plan was under development about midway through, Dr. Stoltz's 820 carbon neutrality plan was adopted by council. And we felt we would be negligent in our duty on this transportation plan to ignore that. And so Stacy and the consultant team and Eli really worked hard to incorporate the recommendations from that plan into this plan. And you may recall going back to that 820 plan, there's, rough order magnitude, there are two major strategies. The first is to get 50% of the vehicle miles traveled off the road. Again, transitioning people to active forms of transportation like walking, biking, taking transit. And then the 50% of remaining vehicles that are on the road to make those electric vehicles to the fullest extent possible. So I think part of the response to your question lies in the 820 plan, and part of the response in terms of how we operationalize the active transportation components lies in this plan.
Councilmember Griswold.
Stacy, are there any plans to update the chart regarding pedestrians that survive at different traffic speeds? And one of the reasons I ask that is our product mix is changing in terms of more pickup trucks, more SUVs, with the much boxier, more deadly grill area, as well as more delivery drivers, be it Amazon or DoorDash or whatever. So I was just wondering if Sam Schwartz has talked about updating that chart, because I'm assuming that vehicles are actually more deadly than this chart would indicate. And another area that supports the separation of pedestrians and cyclists and cars with buffered bike lanes or automatic traffic signals, RRFBs, some kind of actual separation, is the blind spots. I'm sure you're familiar with right-of-way that shows the number of children that can sit in front of a pickup truck that are totally not visible.
Yeah. Yeah, with regard to the graphic itself that's in the plan, that's based on the latest data that we had. But I think you are absolutely right that cars are getting bigger, taller, and blunter, and that has an impact on the safety of those vehicles on the road. That is a harder thing to address at a local level because those design criteria are based on federal policy. So I
Mhm.
think that is definitely an important thing to look at and track. But at the local level, I think focusing on things like speed and visibility are the things for you all to focus on in terms of safety.
Oh, okay, thanks. And yeah, if we're going to get to zero, we have to do it all the time.
Right. I was going to mention that actually, piggybacking off of Eli and Raymond, both for zero emissions and zero deaths. There's not one silver bullet. It's going to take a lot of different strategies.
Mhm.
Any further questions? I guess I'd like to echo the thanks of some of the other council members. Obviously, this is an area of extreme importance and interest to all our residents, as evidenced by the the broad and deep participation that we've seen time and time again in this area. I want to thank staff and Staff Plus for all the good work that's been done here. We look forward to making it a reality. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you've been connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you are connected further, please enter *9. *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. If you've entered *9 indicating that you wish to speak, our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number when it is your turn to speak. When it is your turn to speak, you will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to your time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
Caller with the phone number ending in 702, do you have a comment? Caller 702, press *6 to unmute yourself. Caller with the phone number ending in 702, do you have a comment?
Yes, this is Jim Mogensen, and I just wanted to make 2 comments. Still strong. This is the first time I've called into a city council meeting, so I'm working on it. The diversion and expungement pilot program, I just think it's a good thing to do, but we do need to keep track of who it is that we are serving with the diversion and expungement program. Ms. Slay was talking about people who have limited engagement with law enforcement. And she talked about how the caseload was down when the students weren't here. This makes sense. People have bad days. It makes sense for them to have diversion and expungement, but it may not interact with people who are more likely to have multiple interactions with law enforcement. So as long as we understand that, I think it makes sense to do that. So as long as we're keeping track of that. As it relates to the transportation plan, the same thing is true with this. We have people who live here and have participated in a survey about how they want to get around town. There are also a lot of people, it's sort of like coming to the airport. You drive in to the airport. If you want to be at a real close short-term parking structure, it's more expensive. And then there are shuttles to get in, and people use transit at the parking rides to get into town. So there's another subset of people who visit, and they will always make, the numbers will always be better for them as it relates to transit. and this is a real struggle. So this is a different question about making sure we're also serving people who need transit to get around town. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Mayor, there are other callers on the line. None of them have their hands raised.
Wish to speak in public comment, please enter *9. *9. Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Amai, second by Councilmember Medina. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.